Welcome to the Real Deal. Today, our guest is Brian Payne, president of Engineered Advisory, a company that's all about serving people, not just profit margins. Brian's passion is building ecosystems of trust, innovation, and human flourishing, and community and teams with intentional love, respect, and purpose. Whether it's tax strategy or spiritual vision, everything he does is about building bridges that empower people and organizations to thrive. So let's hear it from Brian Payne.
Hey, everybody. Doug, this is so fun. I'm thrilled to be with you.
Dude, my pleasure. Thank you for really sharing your most valuable asset, ultimately, which is your time, your expertise, your wisdom. And just to quickly pre-frame, you are the president of Engineered Advisory, and Julio Gonzalez, who's been on The Real Deal on before, and I'm sure will again, has become a great friend and an amazing organization. And when you and I connected, you just fit right in, and we have this amazing opportunity to witness such amazing things that a Engineered Advisory is doing and Engineered Tax Services. But more importantly is that you are really at the head of that spear in many respects, because Julio being the CEO, your role is to kind of make his life a little bit easier and take on a lot of the things that are going to free him to continue to build the holes, build the business in all the other ways that he does it, which really gives you huge responsibility and opportunity as the president. And this is a leadership conversation. So I know one of the things we had talked about in the past are leadership styles and so forth. And we want to hear about your story there. And let's dive into how you're managing the role.
No, awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And you said something that kind of grabbed me. You said there's a lot of responsibility and opportunity. I like to say pressure is a privilege,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of pressure, but it is a privilege, and I'm
Yeah.
loving it. And yeah, as for the role, yeah, we are. It's fun. We're ushering in almost a little bit of a new era, I would say. New technology, new workflows, people in new roles, and we're building our core, but then also adding to it as well. So a
Right.
lot of exciting things happening.
So before we start really diving into your styles and the things we're going to share about integration, just the humanities, spirituality, leadership, communication, all of that great stuff. Share a little bit about how you got to where you are. Like, what has been your path, so that we can learn about where maybe glean where some of these wisdom notes came in, the knowledge shrapnel.
Yeah, yeah. My journey's a rather circuitous one. Brevity is not my strong point, but I'll try and be a little punchy. One thing I really say it started around when I was 8 years old. Um, uh, my family and my mom really had a medical emergency that took her, and from about 8 to 18, the rest of the time I was at home, I didn't get to have as much of a traditional childhood. I was oftentimes taking care of my mom in and out of hospitals, things of that nature. Also had a younger brother to take care of, and I was almost like a little mini adult. We had a family trip one time, and my aunt and uncle have since told me now it was wild. I was only 9 when the family met up, and I woke up before everybody. I made scrambled eggs, bacon for myself, cleaned the dishes, put them all back, and then went back into the bedroom and just started writing in a journal. And they were like, "This kid's 9," you know. And so I always like to say it's brutal but fruitful.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of brutality in those years, but it chiseled me early, and so that was wonderful. And so went to college, got married, moved to Charlotte, did what every good Charlottean does, and got a job at Bank of America, and had a wonderful job at
Or
their
Honeywell, right?
or Honeywell, yeah. There's a few more now. This was a while ago,
Mhm.
um, but I was in their corporate investment, corporate treasury, and I really kind of had my dream life going. Had a condo in we call it Uptown in Charlotte, and it was awesome. But then took the entrepreneurial plunge and shockingly had some early success. That's when I learned success is very difficult. In fact, to me, I'm better at failures. I call them lessons than I am successes. And I failed at success and continued to fail. But was able to pick myself back up, got into the VC space, and through that learned a lot, very eye-opening in that world. But that's when I also got to start working with current and former professional athletes, and got to deeply work with Dikembe Mutombo, who unfortunately passed away last year of a brain tumor. But got to work with him. He was always known for his philanthropy, but we also started getting into the for-profit space, and we got a few things launched before his passing. We were on the precipice of some really cool things together, but that brain tumor came and eradicated many of those opportunities. However, again, back to brutal but fruitful, that was a brutal moment. But I met Julio initially through Dikembe and the work we were going to be doing together, and bring it full circle. Now I'm working with Julio
Hmm.
very deeply, and so I would say it's a combination of a lot of chiseling and challenges, and willingly signing up for those challenges. Seeing pressure as a privilege, so I was
Hmm.
I was always willing to sign myself for new pressures. And then I was blessed to be able to travel around the world, meet a lot of amazing people. The VC space was wonderful because I was introduced to a lot of different opportunities, a lot of breadth. Um, and through that, I'm very empathetic. And so I see when I connect with people a lot of just opportunity to see the world in their lens and
Hmm.
take on their perspective. I'm very curious, and so I got to see the world through different countries, different people, different landscapes, different marketplaces. And even within the country I got to work in from DC, New York, Chicago to California, Texas, Louisiana. Um, and it was just it was a beautiful ride. And along the way, I mostly stayed curious
Hmm.
and continued just to gain perspective, think about things in ways I never had, and then be. I think the biggest part for me was I was able to connect with people that on paper really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? And through all of that, that's where I kind of started to develop, and I grow every day.
Hmm.
But that's where I get really my other centered leadership. I see the beauty in humanity, and I see the beauty in people, and I see it as my opportunity to support them to help actualize their best parts.
Oh, it's beautiful. And yeah, we've there's the old adage, the quality of our life is the quality of our relationships, and much of what you just shared is really about human interaction, and leadership is communication. I mean, the best leaders are oftentimes extraordinary communicators to be able to bring the best out of people, to be able to empathize and express that empathy, because it doesn't matter if, the person doesn't feel the empathy from you. So it's having that ability to articulate that and be able to express exactly or as close to what your experience is, what your perception is, and through all of the various experiences you've had, people you've met, I'm sure that has contributed to your ability to have a certain level of efficacy as a leader, because you have so much more to pull from when things happen, when those learning moments come our way. You have a wide breadth of experience. So let's start diving into some of the conversations around leadership and your leadership style, and how that impacts your experience, and how you approach helping the engineered advisory or any other company that you've worked with in the
Yeah,
past.
yeah, the engineered family.
Yeah.
That's what I like to call it. But yeah, I in by the way, when I say these things, one, they're always evolving and developing and growing.
Of course.
And I'm never saying them as like declaratively right and this is right for everybody. This is just this is just me, right? But for my focus, I call it other-centered leadership. And and truly, I define success by how well I elevate other people. And that's true whether it's business, personal relationships. I'm a little bit of an oddball.
Not as
Some
far
people
as
call
you
me
know.
some people call me a well-intended weirdo, I'm not really driven by money or power or status. I'm really driven by mutual benefit, growth, serving, and success. Honestly, when we put a goal down, I will do anything to accomplish that. And but
Morally,
what's
legally, and
funny,
ethically, of course.
right? Yes, yes. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, but I'll run through that proverbial brick wall, right? Because I see it as my role as the leader is to create environments where people thrive and we grow together. And that's what I love about working with Julio and our amazing team. Um, we have a lot of wonderful people. And so what I do, the way I kind of see myself is I mentally envision myself standing underneath them and just kind of almost like holding a rock or holding a board so they can run. And my goal
Mm.
is to clear the pathway or give them the pathway to bridge them from where we are today and where we need to go. And I know with this team, I have not only the talent, but also the drive, the diligence, the desire, and the fortitude, as well as they're just good people. And so it's really an honor and a privilege to be able to support them and serve them so they can run unabated. Um, to make it a football term, I like to I consider myself almost like a lead blocker, right?
Hmm.
I want to go block for you, so you have a hole to run through, and you score the touchdown.
That's, I mean, what a powerful sentiment. I mean, it's really great leadership is about inspiring other leaders and allowing them to, as you use that metaphor, them to do the run, for them to be able to take the actions without being micromanaging or being on top of them for every little thing is really just give them a goal, let them do what they do best and execute it. Um,
Absolutely.
Forgive me for a somewhat tangential conversation. So many times the people whom I interview are going the opposite way that you went in this way. So many people I interview went from having a job or having a W-2 or having like one company that they're working at, and you went and they pursue their entrepreneurship. You went from being an entrepreneur in so many ways, and I know you still are, yet now you went from fractional to coming on, sort of full time and taking on that full responsibility. Uh, what was that like? Like, share a little bit on like how that decision making came in, and what were you evaluating? Because there's pros and cons to both. And now, granted, working with Julio, I get it. It's very entrepreneurial anyway, the way the company functions and all that. So in many respects, you're probably experiencing it as if you were a consultant. But your heart is a much different place now, and your care for the people in the organization have a different, not that you wouldn't care as much as a consultant or a fractional, but now it's way more family. Like you went from dating to getting married in some
Right.
respect. Um, i- is there a distinction there? Was this a conversation for you? Did you kind of sit there and go, "Ooh, do I want to be tied down to one company?" Or was there any resistance, any part of you resistant to kind of going in that direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. Admittedly, it was rather unintentional the way that it played out. Um, in some regard, so there was something that catalyzed my decision to kind of get to take that entrepreneurial plunge and dive into the unknown. Um, when I said I didn't handle success well and I failed at that, I did almost just go back into, and by the way, I don't say this with any disparagement, but I did almost just go back into a corporate job. But you are right. The more common theme that I've seen is people will stay with one company or one role for a long time, and then they go out. I kind of went out. I was scattered, and now I've kind of brought it in a little bit. Um, it wasn't purposeful, but for me, it worked out kind of beautifully. I really like Bruce Lee, and he talks about being water. When the water's in the cup, it becomes the cup. When it goes in the bowl, it becomes the bowl. I am one of those where I just want to flow, and that is where life just took me. The reason that it worked out for me, at least, is I got to experience a lot in that spreading, scattered kind of season, you know. Um, and I think, Carl Jung says that your first 40 years of life are R&D. It
Yeah.
gave me a lot of research
Yep.
and a lot of development um, through it. And what was so good for me is it gave me opportunity and perspectives and ways of thinking that I've never had before. And it just opened me up to so much that I realized the more I learn, the less I know.
Mm.
And it was through that I think I really became a little more of a sponge. Admittedly, when I was younger, I was more, this is how I think, this is who I am, and I am just going to be this, right? I was a little boxed. This softened me. And I like to think in garden metaphors a lot. I think of our minds as a garden. I
Mm.
think of our life as a garden. I think of our relationships as a garden. I had a pretty, I had a pretty tough soil early on, and initially I was like, "This is how I'm going to do it. This is how I'm going to live. This is what I'm going to do." Right? A lot of rigidity,
Mm-hmm.
and then through all these experiences, it softened my soil, and I was like, "Oh, this is kind of fun." And I realized with softer soil, I grew and flourished at a much more rapid rate.
Mm.
And so what's kind of happening and happened is I get to take all these different perspectives and viewpoints and approaches and ideas and concepts from all over the world that I got to experience myself. And now I get to come in and channel it with purpose and focus.
Mm.
And it's so fun because even you mentioned Julio's entrepreneurial, he is. So there's still new things coming and new opportunities. And also, even within a company, there's a lot of different types, right? Different personality types, different ways of thinking, different love languages, different learning. And so now I feel more adept at being able to serve people because not like I never meet someone like, oh, you're just like blah blah blah, so I'm gonna treat you like blah blah blah. It's not quite like that, but it is. Oh, I've experienced people that learn like you, that connect like you, that work like you.
Mm.
This worked in the past. Let me try this approach over here. Oh, and you're very different. You're more like this. But I've had something similar in the past, and this is what I did, and it seemed to work. And so it kind of allows me to be very fluid with people. I always am trying to connect with the people. I'm all about connection. You can ask my team. Last year, our executive teams all over the country, from San Francisco to New York, Charlotte, Vegas, Phoenix, all over, right? I flew to every one of them and spent hours together talking about not just work, but just life in deep conversations. And I'm empathetic. And so I like to almost be able to try and take on their mindset. So I have a little bit of a better understanding and empathy of how they tick, how they think, how they work, how they learn, how they communicate. And through all of that, I'm able to, hopefully, at least, my goal is to be able to connect with them and work with them and better serve them through that connectivity, that mutual understanding, and that integration together. And then the most challenging part is so you have all these different pieces. I think of things in a puzzle. So I have all these different pieces, and then it's my role to work with the team to put the puzzle together. right? Integration.
Hmm.
And integration is to me the most pivotal piece of really everything, from humans to technology and all creation, really. Um, but it's allowed me to get better at connecting and developing the individual pieces and then integrating them into a beautiful puzzle.
So that's beautiful. Share with us a little bit because there's those are dancing on two different planes, right? Because you've got the people who are great at right now, what you just shared, like working on the puzzle piece. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, they just stick out like, let me just make this puzzle piece the perfect piece. Then you've got the person who's looking at the box going, this is what we're making. And sometimes the balance between being able to get granular and kind of know how to put some things together with some specificity, obviously, because you also have the 30,000 foot view. Was there a time where one you excelled at and you worked on the other? Like, were you like, was there something in you was like, man, I could see the big picture, fantastic. I'm having challenges with the pieces, or were you I'm great with the pieces and the next thing I need to really master is the big picture thinking, because I know you've experienced people like that, like I'm big picture, like that
Mm-hmm.
I do not getting too granular is, unless it's in music and I'm mixing something or, listening to certain parts. But when it comes to some other things, is, certain processes and procedures and all of that, I'm a little more, kind of go with the seat of my pants. I'm not a big SOP person for, me perfect personally, but I should. And I know it's a weakness. So for you, was there an area that you were looking to develop and one that came more naturally?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I'm kind of uniquely suited for both a little bit. Earlier on, it was more in the granular. I love building. I love designing systems, compensation models, incentive plans, financial models. I kind of nerd out on that stuff. What I do that's a little nuanced is I always am focusing, particularly when I'm building my compensation and financial plans. I'm always focusing on one, uplifting people. That's
Hmm.
almost that's just a given. But then the mission, vision, and values of the company, and I want to build it so because I see incentivized plans and compensation models and your financial model. I see all these as really driving your habits.
Hmm.
I focus on habits and the behavior that we're driving. And I build all my models to drive the habits that we want that are not only going to bring us economic success, but also drive people to our mission, vision, and values. And so in the granularity of it and the building of it, I love that. And I lived there earlier in my career. Oftentimes what would happen is I would join a firm or consult for a firm or start helping build, and my role is oftentimes, okay, hey, Brian, we have nothing in terms of financial models, reporting. Um, we don't. Some companies I would start with, they didn't even have documents saved anywhere in an organized way. So
Wow.
it's like, okay, let's just start with that, right? And so it was a little more task oriented, admittedly. And but I think in pictures and images, and when I catch a vision or a goal, I do see it from like kind of that 30,000 foot view. And there are times when I would be at that macro 30,000 foot view, but I'm working down in the weeds, and I'll be like,
Mm.
I'm sick of this, right? Um, but then as I grew and I was able to continue on, I got to spend a little more time on the vision side of things, more of that macro. And I do like playing in there as well. And so I'm a little bit of both. And but when I'm in that mode, or if I'm in that phase, it's kind of funny because generally what I end up doing is, because most visionaries do not thrive. I think in stoplights, greens, yellows, reds, your greens are what you're really good at. You thrive,
Hmm.
you love it. Yellows, you're either not great at it, but you enjoy it. That's singing for me. Or you're not good at it, or you're not that good at it, but you do, or excuse me, or you are good at it, but you don't, it doesn't really give you energy. Um, and then reds are just, you don't enjoy it and it doesn't give you good energy either. And I always want people in their greens. And what's fun for me is when visionaries, particularly ones that don't want to get into the granularity of things, I tend to really thrive in those relationships because what I'll do is I'll spend the time with them, like, give me your vision, let me see it, right? And then I'll go back and I start to paper it up first. And it normally starts in like the form of like an executive summary or a deck, but I'll share it and like, hey, did I capture your vision? And
Hmm.
very rarely do I get on the first try, but they're like, wow, that's actually a lot closer than I thought. A few iterations and boom, now we got it. Cool. Now we get more granular. And I'll just kind of keep building that out. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, we have your vision, your mission, vision, values are here, business plan here, all your systems, your financial model, your compensation model, here's your incentive plan. And let's go do it. And it's been so fun. I love actualizing ideas. It's not even ideas. I like actualizing people's ambitions, whatever it
Mm.
is. I even got to help UFC fighters win UFC belts. I got to help bring products to market that were literally drawings on a napkin, and now they're PGA certified products. Um, and now I'm with the engineered family, and this one obviously already has 20 years of history, and so it's not an idea that I'm just taking. But now what we're kind of in a little bit of a molting season where we're stepping into a new shell, and so we get to take the benefits of 20 years of history, but we're kind of stepping into a new future. And so I'm getting to build and actualize, even though we do have decades behind us.
Well, and having decades behind us could be a blessing or a curse because oftentimes there are some patterns that are deeply ingrained into that 20 year. And there's a lot of potential to have, well, that's what we've always done.
Mhm.
And technology is changing everything. Culture is changing. Like so many things are in even more flux than have been in the past. So how do you navigate that when you come into a situation where there has been a way of doing things and it talk about habits, those are the habits, those are the things we do without thinking. It's just the way we've done it, and that can be a challenge to help people shift their behaviors as you shared and to create those new those new patterns, those new habits. How do you navigate that? What are you, from a leadership perspective, what has been some effective strategies, tools, resources, mindsets in order to facilitate that transformation?
Yeah, that's always that one. That's part of the most. That's maybe the most very. That's probably the most variable component
Hmm.
um, in those types of situations because every person is different, every culture is different, and the level of um, ingratiation, I would say, can be different as well. I tend to always focus on two things. It's operating out of love, and that's phileo love, that brotherly love,
Hmm.
building, galvanizing, coming together, that love, and then trust. Trust is huge to me. Building trust through radical transparency and empathy is really how I approach that. I lead with honesty. Even you do have some difficult conversations in those, um, but trust is the currency of all great relationships. And what I try and do is I try and earn the trust. Um, uh, with ETS last year, I for a while I was sending something called the daily boost, where I would just send like a daily quote and just how it resonated with me, right? And I've been taking time to do one-on-ones with everybody in the company. Haven't gotten everybody yet, but I'm trying. Um, but I really almost just kind of share my heart a little bit early, and Once you have a little bit of trust, I feel like more people are ready to ride the ride.
Hmm.
I think it was Marcus Aurelius said, finding men who are willing to die is relatively easy. Finding men who are willing to suffer patiently, that's difficult, right?
Wow.
And when you change a company or whatever it is that has like 20 years of history, molting is brutal. I mean, read about a molting eagle. Their beaks are, they sometimes they have to break them off intentionally. So they're just beating it against a rock or something to knock off their talons fall off, their feathers fall off. They almost die. And in human history, you can read throughout. It's always easy. You start looking back and you start longing for the past. Oh, so much easier then. It would have been better off just staying over there. And the funny thing is, in the middle of the transition, they're not wrong. There's a period where it's like, yeah, it was just better the old way, because you'll find yourself in this weird space where we've brought on the new, but it hasn't really connected yet. It hadn't hit
Hmm.
yet. And you've also dismantled the old. And so it's not really effective either. And so now you're just like trying to hold all this together and keep it from falling apart. And so in those, for that time period, they are in some regards correct. It would have been easier and better just to stay with the old way. It was working, right? What I try and do in those instances is first, you have to keep, and that's why I think your mission, vision, values are so important. It's not just something to put down and be like, hey, look, we did it, check. That becomes your North Star, it becomes your focus. Like, yes, it's easy to look back and longingly say, man, I wish we could just go back to where we were. I knew what I was doing. It was comfortable, right? The human mind naturally seeks comfort. Change is uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And so your focus truly matters. I also focus a lot on just progress and inertia. Human brains now, actually, I think we have a shorter attention span than goldfish.
What?
I think the
No,
human mind now,
just messing with
scientific.
you.
Oh, that was good. You got me on that one. Um, and we live in a soundbite culture and
Yeah.
headline kind of society, and we expect things now. And I do work with urgency, but it's always tough because a couple of things. One, ideas tend to have a gestation period to them.
Hmm.
You have the idea, but then you're like, ooh, but this, ooh, and that, and it's kind of forming, right? And so you're putting these new ideas together, and then it never goes to plan. And while you're building it, you're like, on paper, this was perfect. Um, but then you actually apply it, and it's not as perfect. And going back to some of that breadth, uh, oil and gas taught me that lesson very well. One time there was a project where some of the brightest engineers in the lab designed this plan, and they're like, "This is going to work." They took it out to the field, and this guy didn't even go to college, right? He was one of the more kind of grunt workers in the field, and he looked at it, and Doug, I kid you not, in less than 30 seconds, he looked at them and they said, "This is never going to work." And they were just perplexed. And yeah, well, they gave it a go. It did not work. It went exactly as he thought. And so there is always kind of that chasm between paper and real. And that's oftentimes where a lot of people want to discard and quit. Complaining and quitting are the two easiest things that humans can do, in my
Hmm.
experience. And that's where my job gets the most challenging. And I have to, and I have to, it's always, to me, it's a redirection of focus and then highlighting the progress. That's why I love OKRs. Hey,
OKRs.
oh, sorry, excuse me, objectives and key results.
Hmm.
So we set our objective. We're going to build this, and it's going to be awesome. These are the key results. They're kind of like your little milestones, like mile 1, mile 13, whatever it is, right? And I get people trying to focus on the objective, but then also look at what we have done. Look at what we have accomplished. I know right now you're looking in the midst of it, and it feels chaotic. I don't know if it's a real word or not, but I like to call them hecticities. You have hecticities all around you.
Say
because
that
you don't
again.
even know hecticities.
Hecticities. Okay, like
Yeah, it's like
hectic
things that
and
make you
yeah,
feel hectic,
yeah.
right? Um, you're trying new things while still having to do old things, and the new things aren't even working well, you know? And so it makes you just feel hectic, and you're like, this isn't work. And and so what I try and do is I do that redirection of focus and keep looking forward. And sometimes you just have to stack the days, and those seasons are tough. You were just stacking the days. But then all of a sudden, you can't, and remember, you can't have a breakthrough without a break point. You have a break point, and then you break through. The tough ones do. That's why moxie and grit are so important. And when you have a breakthrough, and now you get to look back and you see these things that you thought would have broke you, but they didn't break you. And now I'm still walking. In fact, I'm walking better. And now you start to feel kind of like that molten eagle coming out of it. Wings are better, my beak's better, my talon's better. Okay, that was brutal but fruitful. And that's kind of how I approach it and walk people through it. And that's a little more on the macro side of things, or just like the whole team. I do try, and admittedly, I need to get a little better here right now with our team because we are going through some molting. But then I also try and connect with each team member individually and try and just give them a nugget that works for me. I just had a recent conversation with one of my uh, teammates, and I shared that I'm a very emotional person, and emotions can be good, but you also don't want to be completely driven by them. And just a mental image that works for me is I sometimes have to see my mind as the sky, and the things like the hecticities and whatnot that come through, they're just weather. The sky doesn't sit there and say, "Oh, this is a good day, this is a bad day." No, it might be a stormy day, it might be a sunny day, who knows what's coming, but it's just weather. And let it pass through, and don't feel that you have to action everything. I used to think that my emotions always required action, but now I've learned sometimes no, it's good to, you don't want to suppress them, but sometimes it's good just to acknowledge them. And
Hmm.
then I ask myself, what is that telling me? Normally they're almost just like a little bit of like an alert system for me, like something's off. What's off? Oh, that's why I'm feeling that right now. We're a little incongruent over here. Let me try and
Hmm.
align.
And so let's play with that a little bit. Have you ever, when something was out of line, uh, is it ever something that's out of alignment in your own perception and your framework and the filters that you're running? Or so I guess my question is on that level is when you readjust, are is it an internal adjustment, or if you're feeling that it's simply a key a response to something's happening on the outside? Like where does that show up for you more?
I would say normally on that it's both. Normally, I would say though, it's, let me put it this way, with me, I tend to start with the internal, but I begin that's a wonderful question, by the way, Doug. I focus on the internal first, but I call it question master. I have to play question master to learn.
Hmm.
And so what that'll often look like is, well, let me just put it this way. This is kind of funny. I thought I thought those two words tend to get me in the most trouble.
Hmm.
And that's why I like to play question master. And because normally it's a chasm between expectations and reality
Hmm.
in my experience. And so oftentimes in those, I'll go to somebody and say, "Hey, I'm not saying I was right here, but I thought blah 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 was going to happen. But instead, XYZ happened." And now, where some people, in my opinion, kind of fall flat is they just define the unmet expectation and then stop. What I try and do is this is where the question master comes in. I'll be like, can you help me understand? Understanding is what I'm always going for, right?
Hmm.
Help me understand. I thought we were doing this. It seems like you were approaching it more from this. Help me understand what was your approach? What was your understanding? And I start kind of probing around that. And then generally, what I find is somewhere earlier in the process, I did a poor job of communicating.
Mm.
I did a poor job of finding alignment. Or sometimes our process is broken,
Hmm.
something within our own process. Maybe it's systemic. Um, but that's kind of the approach is there's something obviously that I'm connected, perceiving, resonating inappropriately or wrong. Attunement is another big word I look for. I want to be tuned. I see people as a symphony, right? We're
Hmm.
all playing different instruments, but we play harmoniously together. And so it'll be like my flute section, all of a sudden is going way off on me. I'm like, hey, what gives? But it's to me a good leader. It's not the flute section's fault that they went off. It's me as the conductor. I did something that didn't set them up for success. So let me figure out what in the world happened, and then we get better together. I like to say that I got let's get better together, get better. And there's always lessons in my experience. There's generally lessons on both sides. How can
Hmm.
we both get better together? And oftentimes, what it'll end up being is I could have communicated better, and but next time ask some clarifying questions. You know, things that, like always just try and find the lesson in it on both sides so that next time when you come together, I still may not articulate it as clearly as I should. But instead of walking away and we're filling it with the gaps with guesses, they'll be like, hey, Brian, I have some clarifying questions because it's still a little opaque. And I'm like, oh, good. You remembered
Yeah.
the last lesson, you know, and that's a made up example of just one. But that's how I like to look at it. And then, but then also, and these are the ones that are the most difficult. You get macro punches. You know, sometimes one court ruling, one legal decision, wars. Who knows? Even hurricanes, natural disasters. Those things will come and punch you too, and those are those are those are more difficult sometimes to navigate because you don't really have control.
Mm.
You know, those are beyond me. And with those kinds of instances, I think back on the Marines. Marines generally plan 75% of a mission.
Hmm.
And it's not because they're poor planners, but it's because they leave room for the variables they don't know. Kind of like you don't know what you don't know. I think I said that earlier.
Hmm.
Um, I said the more you learn, the less you know. They'll dive into a mission and they learn more. And then they also realize they didn't know as much as they thought, right? You don't know what you don't know. And so they leave that room for those variables. And I take a similar approach. Not that I only build like 75% of a business plan, but it's good to leave a little room and have that flexibility to be nimble, be water, right? And so when things hit you, you can absorb it and you can plan around it and it doesn't destroy you. And that's also why having that North Star is so huge because some companies I've been part of, when you don't have that North Star, you don't have that mission, vision, values, you don't have a goal, an objective in mind, something hits you just a little bit off, but you just keep going that way. And now you're further and further and further away. When you have your North Star, something hits you, you're just like, oh, okay, now we just pivot and redirect, and now we're back. So that's kind of how I approach those
And
things.
and that's so important. And let's go, kind of dive into a little bit of a esoteric kind of space in the importance of the mission, vision, and values and the North Star. Now we're getting into um, we're really getting into the spiritual aspect of business, where we're really creating the roadmap of what our guidelines are, what does, when we've got our value system, what does that look like when the company knows that, it frees the leadership up to allow the people within the organization to take their own initiative, to make decisions on their own, because it's in alignment with that. So when you come into an organization, or do you automatically jump to mission, vision, and values, and kind of look to how culturally they've been living them out and like what their model is? Like, how do they know that they're on mission? How do they know they're living the vision? How do they know they're living the values? And then what do you do to help encourage those behaviors through and that becomes all of the and we'll dive into a little bit the difference between financial gain and the other gains, which again, those are all the spiritual gains. And by the way, so is financial, because the only reason why people want money is so they could do the things that bring them joy in the first place. So it has, and I know it's a loaded question. There's a lot going on to
Yeah, I
unpack,
love it.
but it's being a leader of an organization with multiple employees. You have multiple energies, multiple filters, multiple strategies, multiple ways that people are going to live out the mission, vision, and values. And what do you lean into to make sure that not only are the people in the company doing it culturally, how do you stay on track as well?
Yeah. Oh man, a lot of good stuff to unpack in that one. Um, so what I'll start here with is kind of first how I assess, and then how I see it, and then how I apply it. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
Okay. So how I assess is first I really look to see, is it being used or is it collecting dust,
Mm.
kind of thing. Because all companies have, not all, but the lion's share of companies have them. But a lot of times they're just something that they put up on a website or
Right, it's just a
wrote down in a
platitude that's there.
document.
It's like, yeah, we were told we are supposed to have that. Yeah, back in high school, they said in your business plan, you should probably have mission, vision, and values. Not really sure what they mean.
And so she's collecting dust, right? And I'm like, well, that's not very effective. And the way I see it and the way I view it is I want it to be one, I really want it to be reflective, not only of the company, but then also the leader. We did revamp and rewrite our mission, vision, values. And I do love the approach we took. So with Engineered Advisory, we have three companies that are part of that family, ETS, TGP, and IPA. And all three of us now have the same core values and the same mission statement. Now, our how is different, but I love that. I love that. I'm all about harmony, unity, and operating kind of a mindset of phileo love. And but I want it to be reflective of the leader. And I know that our mission, vision, and values and what we're doing, I do truly believe it reflects our leadership and our team. And and what I do is I see it as really a lens or a prism. Rigidity is not really my thing. I'm not saying it's bad, but I don't apply it in a way where it's like, okay, our mission and vision and values are this, and now everybody do this. Because now you're all just bricks in the wall, right?
Hmm.
And Pink Floyd was not very fond of that. I'm not either. Um, but that's why I like aligning business models with mission and values. The way we make money should reflect who we are and what we stand for as an individual and as a company. And our business model should drive the behavior, the habits that align with our mission, vision, values, our purpose, right? Otherwise, you are incentivizing and paying people for behaviors and habits that are incongruent with
Hmm.
your mission and vision and values. And now you've just created dysfunction. And now anything that you build on top of that, you are building on top of dysfunction.
Hmm.
And so that is why I am. It's probably my most. I'm for the most part very fluid, but that is one of the things when I start to build something new or put new models together. That's one of my most rigid points. I'll be fluid in what it looks like, but it is very. There aren't very many times where it's palatable to me for someone to say, hey, I know these are our core values, but we're going to incentivize behavior that's fundamentally I just, that's cringy to me. I have like a vitriolic response to that. It hurts to even think about that because I see a big disconnect between monetization and mission in many companies and marketplaces, and it's destructive. I
Hmm.
just that's there's no other way for me to put it. And so I don't want to put anybody or any company on the trajectory of dysfunction and destruction. And
Because it's already
so,
built into the system to begin with. Like
right.
we're already so used to it, so that's why it's so important to have that the North Star, the mission, vision, and values, because we naturally are just kind of going to do what's easy, and doing what's easy isn't always what's and what's convenient isn't always what's going to serve each other and the organization, and it's not sustainable if people aren't going to be on that same page, and to your point, that harmony where we're playing off of each other and we're complementing each other, and really kind of encouraging and empowering the skill sets that we have, and then finding your complementary, puzzle piece, as it were, so that everyone is actually on that same page, and the mission, vision, and values ultimately is the picture
Hmm.
that we're
Yeah.
using the puzzle to create.
Yeah. It's so funny that you mentioned that people generally like to go for what's easy. Uh, The Power of Habit is an interesting book, but it kind of talks about how our brains are wired for plasticity. We want to be placid. Our brains naturally want to relax. They'll
Hmm.
last the longest in more of a placid state. As a, I don't have to do as much right now. I get to relax. I get to chill. I get to rest a little bit. I probably overdo it, but that's why I'm very intentional about my inertia, my trajectory, my energy. I want to keep my brain active. I'm a big believer that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Hmm.
And in my experience, when you focus on taking the easy, you oftentimes are succumbing to immediate gratification. And immediate gratification always feels good in the here and now.
So does
But in
crack.
my yeah, so does crack, yes. And but then you find yourself living in your pound of cure,
Hmm.
and that is not a fun place. I don't know if you've ever heard the choose your hards, but it's like financial discipline is hard, debt is hard, choose your hard,
Hmm.
exercising is hard, health problems are hard, choose your hard,
Hmm. Well,
and
I
and
use
so
the term, the pain of discipline weighs ounces, and the pain of regret weighs tons.
oh
And
yeah.
so it's a very similar thing. We call it the hard easy, right? Do what's hard now so you have it easy. And then Les Brown was famous for saying, "Do today what others don't, and have tomorrow what others won't." Because yeah, it's and that's so tough. Like, even you talk about dysfunction. We all hear dysfunctional families. Like, all grew up in a dysfunctional family. We've normalized it. It's almost like, people joke, like, who didn't come from a dysfunctional family? And then what happens is, because the personal drives the professional, most businesses look like dysfunctional families. They've got the weird uncle, they've got the black sheep, they've got the class clown, or so they've got all those parts that are in there. And to go down that path a little bit, I didn't mean to interrupt you, and I hope
No,
this
it
doesn't
is great.
derail, is how do you navigate those personalities? How do you lean into, celebrating some of the things that might be really good all right, so I'll give you a great example.
Mhm.
Like, my experience has been, the best salespeople oftentimes make the worst managers. Like, so sometimes, meaning that someone go, "Oh, you're crushing it out there. You're now sales manager. You're now in charge of the team. You're now VP of sales." And the skill sets that made them so successful in the sales role are what make them terrible in the leadership role. And now all of a sudden they're leading a team, and they're treating them like they are prospects, or they're, so how have you navigated that, or have you even experienced it in that way?
Oh, definitely have experienced it. Yeah, that's always fun. It's yeah, I mean that everybody is kind of going back to the stoplights, the
Hmm.
greens, yellows, reds. My goal is always to get people as much as possible operating in their greens, right? And every different personality is, I really tend to think of things and teams as like tapestries. One, I'm a big, and this sounds like a religious word. Oftentimes when I use it, people are like, "Oh, are you trying to, convert me?" It's not a religion thing. I love redemption. I love it because if you just take it to its simple concept, you take something that is broken and you make it better. Not sure if you're familiar with kintsugi, but it's a Japanese art form where when a piece of pottery or clay breaks, they actually fill the cracks with gold to highlight the cracks because it actually makes it now
Mm.
stronger. And it's beautiful. And so humans will hurt people. We will inevitably hurt people. Um, I tell people, I'm going to fail you. I've told my team this. I will fail you. I trust me. I don't like saying that, but I know I will. Not intentionally, but I am a finite human. I can only do so much. But if I hurt you or fail you, I do ask for grace. Again, I know that's somewhat of a religious term, but it's again that chasm between, hey, your understanding was this, you thought I was going to do this, I did this. There's a gap. Fill that with grace. Come to me, and let's figure out
Hmm.
what happened. But I do beg you, don't come thinking that I did it intentionally or maliciously, anything like that. Um, and when you can get a company, a team, what have you, filling those chasms with grace and then redeeming the breaks, that's when it gets good. And what'll happen is I don't even really look at life as failures anymore. There's just lessons and successes. Every failure is a lesson.
Hmm.
And so when we put someone into a new role, I expect them to fail. And I tell them fail early, learn quickly, right? And in ideally, in an ideal world, you'd have everybody only operating in their greens. Very rarely do you get that though. So you do have some people who step into a new opportunity and it's not a green for them. It might be a yellow, it might even be a red. Now, what's awesome is, and this is where humans are so great, we have the power of inspiration. And I have seen some people get inspired and they've converted a red into a green or a yellow. They've
Wow.
gotten better at it, right? They've learned the lessons. Sometimes they don't. Have you heard the phrase pressure makes diamonds?
Hmm.
I like to add on that it also bursts leaky pipes. Some people are diamonds, some people are leaky pipes. And I don't say that with any arrogance and I don't say that with any disdain. Some people are just built different. Not everybody's built to be a diamond. That's okay. We don't need all diamonds, right? I like diversity of thought and personality because they have different strengths and different weaknesses. But what I look for in those instances when I put someone into a new role and they start to fail and they fumble and they fall, if they're a diamond, in my experience, what they do is when they have that failure, when they do that, um, they focus and they get better. The leaky pipes tend to fold and complain. So when I see someone struggling and failing early, if they're focusing on getting better and they're improving, they're generally going to be a diamond. If they're folding under that pressure rather than focusing, and if they're complaining rather than improving, they're probably a leaky pipe. And and then what I have to do is you have to assess who's doing what in your team. And sometimes they'll just get better at it or learn. Sometimes you have to bring in some reinforcement and help. Hey, this isn't your skill set. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person, but this isn't your jam. This is Habu, right? We have the Habu conference, highest and best use. We're not Habuing you. I turn that into a verb form sometimes. This is not the highest and best use of your time. It's not the highest and best use of your skills. So let's bring in somebody else for that and maybe take that plate off of you if it gets to that point. And so there is a little bit of a tinkering component. You're as you're building, as you're learning, as you're forming, you're always improving, right? This is pretty wild. I'm sure you've heard, get 1% better every day and you're 37 times better at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
If you take that out a decade, if you get 1% better every year for 10 years, you are 5.9 quadrillion times better. Quadrillion. My human brain can barely even fathom that number. We've never had a quadrillionaire on this planet.
No.
And I think it was, I forgot who said it, but I know there's a really good quote that says most humans overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but woefully underestimate what they can do in a decade.
Yeah, I don't know
And
if Tony Robbins coined that, but that is a sentiment that he shares often. In because the personal drives a professional. It's why personal development is so important. Is for that very reason. What you're sharing right now is the little improvements, the day to day, the small incremental improvements create compound interest on ourselves when we invest that way.
yeah, Warren Buffett made a lot of money off that, right? And that's what he focused on, and
Hmm.
and it worked for him. And because it's true. I mean, it's just math, right? You're just mathing at that point. And that going back to your business models and your financial models driving that mission, vision, value. You're laying your foundation with that, and you're building on top of it. And early on, you don't see a whole lot of progress. It's just you feel like you're just grinding and barely moving. But then you start to gain some speed and some rhythm, right? And that's where I really believe you get what you pay for. And if I pay you this way, it's going to drive your behaviors that way. And that's why I focus on it so early, because once you get that rhythm and you're going, everything speeds up. And
Yep.
it becomes a lot more challenging to look back at your foundation because now you're having to dodge and weave and navigate and move more quickly. And so that foundation, it's so pivotal because if you have it built right and then your models are driving you towards it, now you don't have to sit there and be like, oh, wait, are we actually paying for the right stuff as you're flying at 100 miles per hour?
Right.
Oh, no, I just realized that we pay our people in a way that is fundamentally incongruent with what we want. Now you're trying, while you're going 100 miles per hour, you're trying to tinker over here with
Hmm.
your compensation plans, which disrupt things. And now you're bigger, you're moving faster, and you're impacting more people. And that is why I really live in that ounce of prevention and getting it done right the first time.
Yep.
And that's why I'm so passionate about designing financial and operational systems that incentivize the kind of love, again, phileo love, respect and connection that we need. It's really kind of where my spiritual component meets my business acumen, and I try and put that together. Not in any religious dogma to convert, but the most beautiful part to me about humans is their inspiration, their creativity, their energy. And if we can bring that together, we're almost like those EV batteries where it's like if you connect 10 EV batteries, the output's not the equivalent to just 10 individual EV batteries. It's like 100, right?
Wow.
I think humans operate in a similar manner.
Hmm.
You get 10 inspired people, they'll do more than 100 burnt people, withered people. I really believe that. And so when you can get that inspiration going and you're paying them for the very things that drive towards your mission, vision, and values, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And that's what I love doing. I love doing that because what it does is it allows people to work and make a living in a way that is not only congruent, but hopefully elevating for them.
Hmm.
And you're creating a business or a company, or even if you're a fighter, an athlete, a team, whatever it is, but you're creating an essence that gets to drive forward and actualize that vision. And then what I like to do, the most fun part is when you hit that that objective, and you look back and like, we did it. It was more difficult than I thought. Your objectives have to be inspiring because it's
Hmm.
always more difficult than you think. But I love to look back, and I'm one of those where I'm like, okay, we did it. What do we do next? Right? And then you just and now you keep going. You keep going. You keep going. You stay hungry. You stay hungry. You
Hmm.
stay hungry. Not because you have an insatiable appetite for greed, but because effectuating positive change, to me, it's addicting. And
Hmm.
when you get good at it and you can make money while you're doing it, that's powerful.
And that's our, that's the harmony that we're all looking for, is being able to passionately pursue what brings us joy, and at the same time be compensated for that, so that that's sustainable, so that people will, like, I'm working with a friend, a new friend, and he's got this business model, and it's brilliant. He'll be on the show, and I was talking to another friend who I'd introduced to him, and he called me. I was like, "Oh, it sounds great. Like, what do so what are your thoughts on it?" I said, "Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm on board because, one thing, the project is world changing. Like, it's something
Mm.
that is really huge. And when we have him on, and we're ready to discuss it, we've discussed it offline. But what I said to my friend here, I said the other reason, like, really more importantly, the reason why I'm going to get on board with this is because he is so passionate about this. I know that he'll be able to keep pushing through when he gets the resistance, because we are going to get resistance. There is going to be pushback. There is going to be natural and otherwise disasters that cause roadblocks and detours. And unless you don't, if we don't have that passion, that energy behind it, we could just go out, get a case of the effets, and then and be the leaky pipe, as opposed to the diamond, because it's not integrated in who we are as part of our goal. And to say that, I think this is where the mission, vision, and values are so important, because that's where the organization can at least buy into, like, they're bought into that, and this is who we are, this is the way we live, this is our goal. In that context, it takes it away from just the personal, like what I'm getting out of this, to what we're getting out of this. And now we're looking out for each other, and we're anticipating, like, what the next person, what they're going to do with the information. Oh, I'm doing this, and our goal is to do this, and here's my puzzle piece, and I know that I'm going to be locking it into this other piece, so let me make it easier for you, because I get what you're doing and what you need to do. And it's really challenging, and I'm sure you've already alluded to how you navigate that, is by going and meeting each person, and kind of helping them, and everyone, like, you're acting as a president, as the spearhead, in that, the tip of the spear, of making sure that everyone is on that same page, so that they can align their spiritual highest calling to the company's spiritual highest calling, to their vision, mission, and values, and help them find a way to integrate that and harmoniously experience contribution to the whole, as it were.
Yeah, that's man, now you're getting into my 30,000 a little bit.
Yep.
Because yeah, what I see, I mentioned integration is such a it's pivotal for me. Um, what happens is, and my hope for people, and it's not, I'm never doing it in a way where it's like do it my way or this defined way. It is yours, but incongruent. Your mission, vision, values is almost like a prism, right?
Mhm.
And light goes into it, and then it
It's the filter.
beams out, yeah, and it
Yep.
yeah, and it filters and beams out. Everything's impacted by it, and it's more beautiful because of it. But the power of habit, um, I really focus two things there. One, I want to learn and adopt the habit of excellence, and where everything I'm doing in my life, whether it's brushing my teeth, leading a meeting, building a spreadsheet, talking to another team member, talking to my wife, whatever it is, I want to be excellent in everything that I do. And then I also want to bring that passion and that inspiration. And so if you bring it into a company, what happens is you almost just get in the habit of being excellent at your mission. And so then anything that's not excellent, anything that's incongruent with your mission, it almost just feels foreign. You're like, oh, why would I even do that?
Mm-hmm.
I want to have almost a distaste if it's like, oh, you can take the easy way. Oh, you can take this way. It'll actually screw a lot of people and wound a lot of people, but you'll make more money. I want that to just taste so bad that we spit it out as soon as it touches our lips.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you grow that real authenticity. You will be tempted. Life, life be lifing, right?
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you say, "Oh, I'm going to do this," you'll get tested. You'll get tempted, and it's whether or not you can keep that focus and withstand those temptations because it's always better. And also, it's scary. Everything, whenever you're doing something that's never been done, it's terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Your destiny is oftentimes on the other side of fear. And you have to have that driving force behind you, and that's where we're better together, and that's where the integration comes in. And what's so powerful is, and like you mentioned, when we met, it just kind of clicked pretty quickly. And sometimes that happens, sometimes that doesn't. It doesn't mean that I give up on connecting with other people, but some are just more natural and some are
Mm-hmm.
not. um, but when companies and systems, you'll see this a lot in like AI and technology integration, kind of like that EV battery in humans. It's not a, 10 individuals outputting, what 10 individuals would. It when you connect it, when you integrate it, that 10 becomes like 100 or 1,000. Technology works that way, humans work that way, companies work that way. And what how I see things is I want to build a beautiful company with strong mission driven models, technology, and people. And then when other companies come that want to integrate and work with us and are congruent with that, and you put those two together, now you've just
Yeah.
blown up a little bit. And then you keep doing, and so now you're just adding new puzzle pieces to your puzzle all the time, and your puzzle starts to form and grow at a pretty exponential rate. Technology can grow exponentially. The human mind grows in a linear fashion, but our inspiration, our passion, our creativity does not. And then when you combine it with the power of technology, ooh, you are a force at that point. And that's what I like to build is something that has staying power and can be a force for good, a force for edification and elevation and love.
I love that. And the other thing, again, it's so amazing to really be focusing in on the mission, vision, and values as the guiding principle, because that is a spiritual center, the aspirational center of the organization. It also serves as the filter through which what you're leading into there is the strategic partners that we attract. Like we're going to when we're living that way, and our filters are looking for that, and we're listening through that filter, and we're acting through that filter. What happens is it's easier to align with like-minded people, companies, those strategic partners, because we are embodying that, we are attracting that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a life lesson for a macro and a micro, personally. When we are congruent, living our mission, vision, and values, and we're passionately living that way, we will more naturally attract the people who are going to align with us, so that we can continue to expand, grow, serve, add value, because we're serving each other. It's the natural reciprocity. The law of reciprocity kicks in, just because, hey, this is what we do. Like we're here to make a difference. We're here to live. These are the values. These are the filters. You're just like me, and that's why it's so important to have that, because if we don't, we could tend to fall into convenience, we could tend to like my daughter, she's 10, and the other day she said that one of her friends stole a water bottle and then told her to steal a water bottle. He's like, you got to steal a water bottle. And she's like, I don't want to steal a water bottle. He's like, you got to steal a water bottle. If you don't, I'm going to tell, you start telling whatever. She's going to tell lies or whatever. Saying, she's
Mhm.
like, all right. And she was like, she's 10. So she was unable to take that full stand against her friend. But what she did do was lie to her friend and say, which is, not two wrongs don't make a right, but at least she was like, I told her because I don't want to deal with her. I told her that I did steal it, that it was in my bag, so she would leave me alone, but I could not do it. I could not. That went against my value systems. Like stealing is wrong, so I wouldn't do it. And I didn't really point out, well, lying is wrong too. So, you could have just took it like, and I was slowly working with her to take a stand, but that happens in life. So if the values are there, someone may do it, and it kind of brings us to the failure part. At least someone may fail on one thing, but they didn't fail on the big thing, and then that brings us to the conversation of failure. And while you did share earlier, you tell your new employees or a situation like encourage them to fail fast and learn from it. What do you do when someone else's relationship around failure isn't the same? And even though you say fail fast and so forth, but other leaders in the organization struggle with that sentiment, and they
Mm.
it's culturally, there's still maybe some old patterns, maybe there was some old leadership, or maybe they have always had, as a leader of a department or a team, have always had a negative relationship with failure and do not encourage fail fast, learn quick on their team.
Yeah, that's a great question, and again, I'm very fluid on things. You mentioned like the like-mindedness and things. It's all about resonance to me, attunement.
Hmm.
It's your vibration, your currency. I'm not a scientist, but um, I've been seeing a lot of scientists actually saying that our minds may be connected to the universe. I wouldn't be too surprised by that, right?
I just saw a thing, yeah, the guy who, I forget the doctor that uh, didn't create CERN, but was doing stuff in CERN and all of that, and was basically sharing that sentiment that, basically our thoughts create our reality, not the other way around.
Yeah, and so when some people have their own little way of doing things. Now, if it is just fundamentally incongruent with what we're doing, okay, now we maybe have to have a conversation. And by the way, whenever you're doing this, you will have attrition. Not everybody is on board for this, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna. I never want. I never want people to need me, and I never want people there because they have to be. I want them there because they want to be.
Hmm.
To me, that's just more powerful. So some people will fall off. I give autonomy. In fact, again, kind of going to my support, like I'm underneath them and I'm almost like holding the board so they can walk. Julio actually sent me an image of people underneath holding a rock so people could walk from one rock, like they were climbing up and traversing a mountain or whatever. They could walk from one side to the other side.
Hmm.
I give people autonomy if they have their own way, their own nuance approach, as long as it's congruent with where we're going as a company. One, I'll learn from it. Okay, teach me. How do you do it? Again, be curious. How can I best support you as you do that? Right. And now what I'll do is as we move, I do like to, if I see some areas of potential improvement, I call it chiseling. A lot of people underestimate, but loving people is often chiseling too.
Hmm.
And I'll give them little just chiseling ideas like, hey, have you ever thought about this? What if we did this? Polish it, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. But so I will let people have that freedom and autonomy. I trust. I
Hmm.
trust them and where they're going. And as long as they're getting the results, and we do measure a lot of KPIs, metrics, and if we're heading the right direction, cool. I don't mind if you take a little
Right.
bit of a different approach. That's fine. Let me
Hmm.
learn from you, and thank you. You just gave me a new approach that I'd never even really seen before. And And so that's kind of how I take those in stride. And going back to like your daughter's situation and all of that, that is where I want to always create a strong force, because in my experience, you're better positioned to withstand those headwinds when they come, when you have a lot of momentum and power behind you.
Mm-hmm.
It's also why who you work with and who you integrate with is so pivotal. Um, don't quote me on this, but I think someone told me that if you look at your five closest friends, your salary will probably be within 10 to 20% of the average of that five. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You're very impact. We all impact each other. Right? We're all connected. I think when we get close and intimate with one another, and so you do want to make sure that you're being impacted by the types of people, companies, what have you. That's where discernment is critical. I have sometimes turned away opportunities that would have made money, and that's always tough. I'm sacrificing money because I know in my heart of hearts, if we connect with that company or that person, it will put us in a state of dysfunction because they are fundamentally incongruent with where we are going. And I don't say that with arrogance. It's not a moral pedestal. It's just, hey, this is our mission, vision, values, and this is how we operate. You do not do that. And so,
But it's a
yeah,
very
being,
pragmatic approach. It's,
yeah,
I mean, it's taking the emotion out of it. To your point earlier, it's doing the ounce of discernment to avoid the pounds of dysfunction and pain that's going to happen in the future if you were to, it's the ounce of prevention. If you know going into it that it's already like incongruent and and so here's the thing. Recently I had an experience in my life where I had it was at the same time, two situations where it was difficult. I'm a, there's a part of me that's a little bit of a pleaser. I want everybody to be happy. I have a lot of resources and I just want to help out and make sure that we're rocking. It's just, it's part of my DNA is as a healer, as a coach, as a transformation agent. It's like see something if someone's, and especially if they're asking for it, I'm like, oh, let me help you. And I'm sure you get that all the time too, from a leadership perspective. People going, Brian, here you'd love some advice. But I also had to bow out of two situations, and it was awkward and uncomfortable for me because I don't usually do that because I saw exactly that. Where it's like, oh, this is going to be, there's some things here that it's not, this is going to be a problem. And
mm-hmm,
rather than stay in that environment because it could have been lucrative, I was like, it's not going to be worth it. It won't be sustainable. And I'm going to be miserable and resentful if I don't address this. And I think it's really important that as you're sharing this, that you're obviously leading by example and also giving permission for others to speak up and say, hey, this isn't really, didn't Tom Shea from Zappos offer one of the things he does is someone would come on and he'd be like, okay, look, I'll give you like $100,000 to quit or stay. And if you
mm,
stay, you're going to get, here's obviously what you're going to get. But that's the idea of that investment and the idea that those 1% increments daily are going to exponentially create growth. Someone who says, oh, I'm going to take the 100K or the 50K or whatever it is to quit. Now I know this is great. I just avoided, I paid for avoiding the kind of person I don't want working here.
yeah, addition by subtraction.
Yep.
Yeah. And anytime I'm having those kind of challenging conversations, and sometimes they're internal, sometimes they're external. Um, I kind of going back, I'm very focused again on building trust through transparency and empathy. And I always am priming those conversations. And I lead with, hey, I'm coming with grace, empathy, and love here. And I oftentimes I say this, I'm willing to risk the relationship. Um, Sometimes that is the most loving thing you can do and say, I'm going to highlight something that I see as problematic or incongruent with where we're going. And I'm not doing it to disparage you. I'm not even necessarily saying you're wrong, but we're not resonating. And so we either need to gain resonance or this may just not work out.
Hmm.
Um, and I get into that. Uh, I don't do it recklessly. Now, if I let my emotions get me, it gets reckless.
Yeah.
But I try and stay rooted in care. And I'm operating with a lens-based thinking, that empathy. I'm trying to put on their mindset a little bit and have a deliberate, thoughtful conflict. And my goal is to build a long-term trust. But sometimes the outcome of those conversations is, hey, I just don't think this is going to work. And that's when you have to be willing to walk away.
Yep.
And those are the most fun, but also challenging conversations. I say the most fun because if you can actually find resonance and you integrate and you come together and it works, I've actually found it tends to feel good when there's just a natural click,
Hmm.
right? Kind of like me and you. As soon as I met you, I was like, love this guy, right? And I hope this doesn't sound bad. I didn't really set this up properly. But in my experience, oftentimes, not all the times, but oftentimes, it's actually the ones who I didn't have that immediate click with, and we had to kind of fight through it and be like,
Hmm.
"What in the world? You see it that way? Okay, I never even thought of that." Right? We see the world different, but then when we do connect, it's like, "Whoa!"
Hmm.
Because two very unlike things just made it work. And that's where I used to get lost and wrapped up in my feelings a little too much. I'm like, they
Hmm.
don't feel as good. And there is that law of attraction and all that. I don't say that that's wrong, but if you got to be somewhat careful, at least in my experience, I had to be somewhat careful with that because if I'm not left untended, you just find yourself only working with people just like you.
Hmm. Right. Oh, of course.
And it's groupthink and it feels good, but it's like, okay, now you have one lens, you have one perspective. When I'm willing to persevere with that person, they have to persevere back, and we grit through, and then we can actually say, whoa, someone who's completely opposite minded of me just connected at a mental, spiritual level. And now I get to see the world through their eyes. I've never seen it this way. Holy cow. I don't necessarily love it. It doesn't feel as good, but man, it gives me some really cool insights that I've never had before. And the fruit of it is sometimes even more abundant than those natural connectivity points. And you need all kinds, right?
Well,
It's not that
and
one's better, one's worse, but it is
of
just kind of
course.
funny how that plays out.
Well, and what this is again, it harkens back to the North Star mission, vision, and values. So I use the term purpose over process. So if we're aligned on purpose, so if our mission, if we all agree on that, and our vision is what we agree on that, and here are our value systems. So these are the values through which we're going to filter the activities, but we're very flexible in our strategies, our processes, how we get there. Super focused on why and purpose, super flexible on how, on process. That's usually where the friction occurs, is how people go about doing it. Now, wow, I never saw it that way. To go, oh, I see how you're going to get there. Not that it's that we disagree on what our mission is. That's a different conversation, and it's okay to have differing feelings around that as well. And there's going to be submissions, as it were. Meaning, so we've got the company vision, but then we have departmental visions. Like how are
Right.
we?
Yeah. It grows and
Right,
it permeates, excuse me, it permeates. That might be a good word for it.
right, but they're still congruent and in alignment.
Right. Yeah.
And
It's an
that's where you can.
extension of it's an overflow.
Right. Like, so, like, as a, well, using music as an example, each instrument serves a different function. They're in different frequencies. right? You've got the drums and the bass and all that are doing the lower frequencies. They're the foundation. When that's off, everything is off, right? So, but then all the different pieces, you could have one little piece that creates some dissonance, which actually makes the piece that much more powerful when you have spaces, when you have dissonance, when you have the different chord structures, different keys, all create a different experience for the participant and the listener. So using music as an analogy, the internal customers are the symphony, and the external customers are the participants, the audience, sort of getting that exchange. And that's kind of the agreement we're all going into when it comes to relationships, is that we're going to have different roles, different experiences. Sometimes we're in the audience, sometimes we're in the symphony, we're playing the instruments, and we all play different instruments. And then we have sections in the symphony, right? We have the flute section and the user in the string section and all of that. So where did that all take us is the importance of also embracing the dissonance at times, because with that we can create something new. We can create like another epic song through one potential disagreement or sympathetic disharmony, which then when it resolves feels so much better. And it's like, wow, that was, we wouldn't have this huge, this deep connection if we didn't have that deep disconnection. And how do we embrace that? And that's the joke, and no, not the joke, but the
Yeah,
purpose.
no, yeah, I love that. Yeah, and it's so funny. I'm sure you've probably heard like the if you judge a fish on its ability to fly like a bird, it's not going to look very good, right?
Right.
And I succumbed to that. I'll never forget because whenever I work with a group, I for a while, yeah, early on, and this is why I like the breadth and now kind of bringing it into focus. But I always wanted to be the same. I thought equality and working together meant sameness.
Mm.
And so I was a flute, and then I'd go hang out with the trumpets and be like, "Oh, now I gotta be a trumpet. I'm trying to sound like a trumpet." And then I like go and try and be like a drum, and it's like, dude, you're a flute trying to sound like a drum. You sound ridiculous. You're a flute. Be a flute.
Be
It's
happy,
like,
right? The hippo.
yeah, yeah, and that's why I love thinking of teams and people as a symphony because you have all different kinds.
Hmm.
You know, you talked about salespeople are not necessarily good at all at necessarily managing, right?
They
I
can
it's
be.
they can be, but it's funny. Last December when we all met to actually create our new mission, vision, values, I put up a Jumanji. Remember the Robin Williams movie,
Hmm.
Jumanji? Yeah, I put up a Jumanji like little clip, and then I put the Lego movie with Chris Pratt, where it's everybody's happy, everybody's cool when they're part of the team, right? And I did that because your dev or sorry your sales and your kind of like your biz dev, all that they're kind of playing more Jumanji. Our competitors are trying to kill them. They have to go and hunt and kill, right, and then bring it back. And it's the operations team that takes it and works together to create the product from it, right? And so it's just kind of a funny way because it ops particularly today where we're mostly working remotely. I'm not saying it's not challenging. Don't hear that. But operations, if you think about it, just kind of by definition, it's a team coming together to build the product,
Hmm.
right, and produce the results. Your salespeople are more your hunters, go out and bring back the kill. And so it's two different mindsets generally
Well,
operating in two different worlds.
here's one play on that.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a team operating like a pack, so now you have a pack of wolves. How much more successful is a pack of wolves going to be versus a lone wolf? And when we could get a sales team that can also lean into their skills and pass things off and work kind of like the ops team does in that, that can also be a profound transformation from in delivering results and exponential growth, because now we're functioning like the team, right? So now it's the ops isn't, using the football analogy, and I don't know enough about football, but it takes the whole team to move it down the road. It's not just the quarterback and the running back. Like they're all working in cohesion, and there are ways that they may not live in it, but they may, sometimes, you know grab the ball. Like, you've ever seen like the kicker running in, like
Oh, I love it when linemen get the ball. They always just are elated after they do
right,
that.
but it's not the norm necessarily. But
Right,
when
they never get it, or very
but
rarely get it.
right, and that's why it's so surprising when it does work as well. And so I guess the point being is also sometimes, depending on the organization, the looking for ways to encourage that same level of teamwork that you were just sharing. And I know I'm kind of nitpicking to some extent. But my experience has been one of the biggest challenges when I'm working with an organization with a sales team is they're so busy thinking they're lone wolves, as opposed to how can we actually work together and leverage and like, okay, you know what, this call isn't working, you'd be a better fit, let me send it over to you, you could help us get this to across the finish line. And then that's what you were talking about earlier about the comp plans and how to incentivize that behavior, which is one of the most challenging things to do, because different people are incentivized by different things. And if money's not their thing, then, what are you going to like it, so
Well, even if it
that's the
is
dance.
money, it's what you pay them for.
Right.
And oftentimes companies, and again, no disparagement, no moral
Hmm.
pedestal or anything, but most companies that I've engaged with, oftentimes the most common business model and comp plan for a salesperson is they eat what they kill.
Right.
So what do you get? A lone wolf killer.
Right. Yeah.
You get what you pay for.
Yeah.
If you want some collaboration and if you want teamwork, pay for it,
Incentivize it. Yep.
incentivize it. And that's why I get creative with my models. And it's some people, it's funny because it does take a little longer.
Hmm.
And I
And it
am,
gets messy.
oh yeah, well, because compensation is personal,
Well,
you
and
know.
also because of the new system, new habits are being formed, and by doing so, just naturally, it's not going to be natural. So it's breaking old patterns, creating new patterns, and tying the compensation to it, which makes it like it's such a delicate dance of faith, trust, appreciation, love. I mean, being an empathetic and empowering leader is paramount to that success.
Well, and you think about what I was telling you, whenever you're trying something new, and they start to long for the past, and they're like, "This isn't working." For a while, they're right. Think about what you have to do when you change a comp plan on someone who is making a lot of money the old way, and now they're not getting quite as many sales, they're not making as much money immediately, and I'm like, "But just trust me, it'll get better."
Well, and they're relying now on someone else. They've been self-reliant. Now they're
Yeah.
relying on someone else to have the same mindset, the same trust, the same all of that, and they're going to deliver and support this big picture. It's yeah,
and
it's
and and your first time is generally your worst, and so
yeah.
what's always so I'm always prepared for it, but it's so painful. So let's say, like in your example, it's like, okay, we want to get a little more collaboration in the sales team. Okay, we're going to incentivize that. So you incentivize that, and then life be life, and right, it's like 9 times out of 10, the first time one of the salespeople decides to collaborate or give something to someone, kind of thing, or try this new approach, the person that receives it, let's use the football. Let's say let's say that your salesperson's running down the field. They're about to get tackled though, so they do something kind of risky, and they toss it backwards to another teammate, and you're hoping they catch it, run with it, and score, right? But because I'm always watching, and it's so funny because oftentimes the first time it happens, they fumble the ball, they drop
Hmm.
it, they don't even catch it. And so now the salesperson's like, see, this is why I didn't do that before. It doesn't work. And you're just like,
Yeah.
you're right. But I beg you, long term, trust me, this is better. And I'm not always saying pass it backwards on the field. That's actually a very risky play, right? Or pitch it backwards, excuse me. But it's just funny how that happens, right? But that's where not quitting, and
Hmm.
that's where you got to redefine it as lessons. Okay, we try to backwards toss to them, halfway down the field in the middle of a play. That's not the best way to get them the ball.
Right.
How do we
That
get them
doesn't
the
mean
ball in a more
collaboration isn't
strategic?
good. Yeah.
Right, yeah, but how do we get better? And then you learn and you learn. And it's generally in my experience, it takes about a year to a year and a half before you start to see the fruit.
Hmm.
And then you're like, okay, totally worth it. But you got to get there. And that first year is brutal but fruitful. It really is. And some people turn back.
Hmm.
Some people it's not for them, and I get it. I don't say they're wrong, but the companies and the ones who are willing to persevere, and like I said, that Marcus Aurelius quote where he's talking about who are willing to endure pain and do it well.
Well, and
That's
that's
rare, but it's so good when it
yeah,
happens.
and especially today, it's adapt or die because
Yeah.
it just the old way. It, if it's not working, it isn't necessarily going to come around.
Well,
Like,
even if it, yeah, well, even if it is working, I think it'll be antiquated quickly.
right, of course.
Bill Gates just came out with something where he said like most of the jobs are going to be replaced by AI, but most human jobs will be replaced by AI in a decade. I don't disagree with him, but I mean, I don't know. I would love to give him a comma. I want to just give him a little comma and just insert the word today.
Yep.
Most of today's jobs are going to be replaced by AI. What I think we need to do as humans, as business leaders, is we create the jobs of tomorrow.
Hmm.
We create the jobs of the future. And I get the apprehension and the nerves that people have with technology. Oh, it's taking our jobs. It's taking our jobs. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. It is. But I can also make an argument that I don't think we're habooing humans for the most part at a very macro level. I don't think that we have most people in their highest and best uses. And so, good. Let technology, not even just AI, robotics, all of it, let them take a lot of the jobs we have today. I don't believe humans are ideally built for production. We're made in his image. To me, that's not a physical. I think it's mental.
Spiritual.
Our physical cheetahs have that dark fur under their eyes so they can run at that speed and the sun doesn't impact them too much so they can see while they're running. That's beautiful.
Hmm.
I go outside in Florida and I'm sunburnt in 5 minutes, right? My gift is not my physical.
Right.
I don't even think it's my ability to produce. I think it's my mind. I really do. And what's difficult is though, there's an addictive quality about producing, whether it's you're building a widget, you're putting something in a box, you're packaging it, or even if it is more computer based, but it's I got 100 emails out today, whatever it is.
Yep.
You can quantify that, and you feel good. You're like, yeah, that's awesome. But in my humble opinion, I think humans are more designed for inspiration, creativity,
Hmm.
harmonizing. I don't really see us as producers as much. And so part of me is like, good, let technology take these jobs. Let's build better jobs. And that's somewhat what I want to do also.
Well, yeah, I think that'll be part two because
Yeah.
we could go another couple hours on all of that too. So
Yeah.
let's wrap it up. Two things I just want to acknowledge. First of all, thank you for your time and all of that. I also want to acknowledge that your willingness to use language like love, like, honor, respect, and to be willing to have that conversation and use that vernacular in a space where sometimes the old paradigm is that's not like you wouldn't think to use those types of words necessarily, or at least love in the corporate or business sense. And I think that's very inspiring to
Oh,
to
well,
know that there are
yeah,
people who have that ability to have, I mean, that again, well, it's why I think, why we connect, why I connect with Julio and all that, because I'm the guy who says love you brother, like, and mean it, and it's not
yeah.
like a thing. But the last question that I always, it's pretty common trite question, but knowing what you know now, with all of your failures and experiences and trials and tribulations, and of course admitting that we would never change that because that's made us who we are and we celebrate them and all of that, if there
Hmm.
was some advice you would give to a younger Brian, perhaps before some challenges are happening, just knowing what you're knowing now, and you were giving some sage advice to the younger you, knowing what you know now, what advice might you give yourself?
Mm. Yeah, I'll stay on. You gave me a good little vibration to it. I'm gonna ride the wave. I do use a nuanced nomenclature for most business, and the advice I would give, the the distinction and the chasm that a lot of society makes us believe is real between your beliefs, church. I grew up in a very Christian household, and your business, that's man-made. I kind of and I don't even know if it's intentional, but I kind of grew up thinking, oh, you go to church and that's where you talk about God and redemption and love and those kind of things. Oh, and then you go to work and that's when you talk about money. They were almost juxtaposed in my mind, at least. That was just my experience. And I operated under that for a long time. And then finally I started to have some breakthroughs. That's where succeeding poorly was my best experience because I built my initial success on I go to church for my love and the good stuff. I go to work to make money. And living in that chasm did not have a sustainable model as I saw it.
Hmm.
And that's why I use those kind of words and that nomenclature, because my wife and I, we run our marriage a little bit like a business. Actually, not a little bit, a lot of like a business. We have an operating agreement, mission, vision, values, KPIs, meetings, all sorts of things. And the number one thing we want to accomplish in this world is we want to highlight and embody and promote the pragmatism of love. I don't think love is just something that feels good. I don't think love is just something for nonprofits. I don't think love is just something for churches or religions or Disney movies or rom-coms. Love is supposed to be in everything that we do. And that's why I highlight the pragmatism of it. In my experience, I think you have more sustainable success, whether you're a for profit business, a nonprofit, a church, a couple, friends, whatever. You have a more sustainable, successful model if you are rooted in love and you operate from it as well. And if you can do that and make money, that's powerful. That is powerful. And for a long time, I lived thinking that those two things were incongruent. Once I harmonized those, that's when the lid kind of popped off for me.
Amen, brother. Wow, what a lovely period to put on the end of this conversation. So, Thank you for your time. Now, if anyone wanted to get in touch with you or EA, ETS, if there's anything you want to promote, share, whatever, now would be a great time to share. If there's something, some way that people could get in touch with you, or just through, we didn't even talk about what ETS does as far as, the business model. But we'll put that in the description. But is there anything that you would like people to maybe get in touch with you or send them to a site or anything that you're willing to impart as far as connecting?
Yeah, you know what? So admittedly, I kind of fade social media personally. And so I wouldn't direct you there. I would say check out our website. If you go to Engineered Tax Services, the Growth Partnership, Inside Public Accounting, that's IPA, TGP, and ETS. We also have Engineered Advisory. And also email me. It's bpayne at engineeredadvisory.com. I would relish that. Reach out. Let me know. Maybe if there's something that resonated with you. I would greatly appreciate the opportunity to learn more and see how we can be better together. And even if some people think something I said was potentially um, off-putting or hogwash, to quote my grandfather, right? I'm open to it. I don't say anything with a declarative I'm right. I'm always
Hmm.
learning. And so feel free to come and chisel. I relish that. But ultimately, yeah, I like connecting because I see no matter what, we're better together as humans. And so if I can help you in any way and you can help me, let's do it.
Amen, brother. Well, I love you for who you are and who you aren't. Thank you for sharing again your most valuable asset, your time, your wisdom, your energy. And we will see you again soon.
And I love you too, brother. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.